Everyone, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development, another episode of Sales and Cigars. Today we got a kind of a fun episode with a sales guy, does some sales training, does something called the Badass Summit, which is a mastermind and helping people with sales and running businesses. Interesting dude from Texas. Donnie Boivin is his name. Badass, a family of companies is his group of companies. He's got a farm. He runs a bunch of businesses. So go grab a cigar, grab a cocktail, strap in for another fun episode of Sales and Cigars. Hey, so Donnie, I appreciate you taking some time to jump on the podcast with me. Thanks.
Hi, Walter, dude. Even the kind of pre-conversation's been fun already, so I think we're gonna have a good time, man. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I mean, you're taking your time away from 3-4 businesses plus a farm. I don't know how you have time to screw around on a podcast.
Well, luckily,
I appreciate it.
I've set everything up that I get to sit here all day, and if something does go haywire on the farm, it's right there. So, for the most part, the animals take care of themselves, and having nothing but online businesses, except for the summit, makes it fairly livable.
Okay, cool. So you can manage it. So talk to me about I love the name Badass Business Summit. Talk to me about what that is.
It actually started off as kind of a fluke. I was doing a Facebook Live and had 100 or so people watching the live, and one of the listeners back in 2019 said, hey, I've got a place I want you to come down and speak in San Antonio, Texas. And I said, oh, that'd be fun. But as soon as I said, yeah, I would do it, a bunch of people started saying, hey, you know what? Why don't we come down to San Antonio? We want to see you speak. And which led to them saying, why don't you, just rent your own little meeting space and we'll do a kind of small get together of just all the success champions. And I was like, all right, hold on. If we're going to do something, we're not going to do it down in San Antonio, right? If we're going to do it, at least do it in my backyard where I have some connections and people that I can talk to. And then they jokingly were like, ooh, and we'll call it DonnieCon. And I was like, no, we are not calling this thing DonnieCon. And there's still some of the old timers that have been around since then to still jokingly call it DonnieCon, but that's never going to be a thing. But that's how the Badass Business Summit came about. And literally, as we record this, 2 days ago was the last day of the third Badass Business Summit. So we'll be doing another one in 2023. But it was fucking awesome, man.
Tell me what goes on, like the audience clue if they want to jump into the party.
Yeah, for sure. So we really helped people in that one build the business freedom. So what happens most times is people have left corporate America, they've started their companies, and they're figuring all that out. They'll go for a year or two before they realize, okay, there's got to be a fucking better way to build a business.
Yeah.
And that's where we come into play. We literally teach all the things that I wish I was told as I was building my business. So focus a lot on sales, a lot on marketing, operations, finance, and mindset in there. And we do panels, we do speakers, we do, mastermind sessions while we're there. And it's all focused on business growth through all the things that nobody teaches you.
Yeah, all the things that never are taught in business school. Corporate America doesn't teach you. It's the things that when the rubber meets the road, you got to go figure out on your own. Where do people? I mean, I know you probably don't have stats, but where do people struggle the most?
It's sales every time.
Yeah,
it's sales every time.
Okay.
Well, you got to think about it. You got a corporate executive that was a vice president of finance or a senior executive over operations, or maybe he was a top sales executive of some sort. It's one thing to sell for somebody else. It's a whole other ballgame to sell for yourself. Because when you sell for somebody else, there's not much emotion tied to it. But when you sell for yourself, now there's a lot of emotion tied to it because it's your stuff. And, in corporate America, you kind of stay in your lane. So if you're an operational guy, you stay in operations. You're a sales guy, you stay in sales, right? When you get out and launch your own business, there's no lanes. you got to do it
It's a
all.
figure eight usually.
And right, right. And you look like the Tasmanian devil and Roger Rabbit did an 8 ball of crack,
Uh huh.
and that's how you run your
Yep.
business. So, and what most people end up doing is they put themselves on an island because they don't want anybody to know how shitty it is or how bad the business actually is. So we're trying to continue to create an atmosphere where people will actually reach out and say, okay, this is some of the things I need to learn. And you create an environment where they're sitting around other business people that are successful or they're going through it. And you let them learn off each other while others, teach. And every summit workshop thing we do, it's not a let's preach at you, let's sell you our shit. It's let's work on your business. So everything's designed that you're not going to take notes and then go try and implement. No, let's work on it right now.
Yeah. Well, so there's actionable ideas kicked around in the session, and people like get up in your business isn't the right way to look at it, but they're actually helping. They're trying to help solve the problem in the moment, right? If somebody's willing to share, somebody else is willing to help because we've all been there, right? And it's,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about any time when you're growing up building a business, you don't know where to go to ask the questions or who to talk to. So if you get into an environment where, you can say, hey, I'm struggling with this, and you got 10 other business owners there at a summit that are either going through it, have been through it, that can throw out ideas and advice, it's things you can instantly do to change and impact your business. And that's what continues to draw the crowds to it.
how many people are you getting at these? How big's your backyard?
So uh, this is our largest one we've done. We did 150 people this year, and we maxed out the hotel. So we took over the entire hotel we're at. So we're now looking for a larger venue. Don't know where we'll end up, but on pre-sale tickets alone, we sold out of VIP tickets for 2023 already.
Wow.
So
Congratulations.
we made an offer at this. Thank you. Yeah, we made an offer at the summit, and less than 24 hours, we sold out of VIP.
Nice. Nice.
So,
Well,
but
so
still got standard to sell. But
something's working, right? I mean, people are.
dude, do you see this pretty face? I mean, come on.
Well, there's energy there. There's actually, I can tell there's this desire to help people, to really give somebody some value for what they're doing, and honesty, I would imagine, is another thing that's pretty.
Well, yeah. My whole world, man, is it will always wrap around teaching the shit I wish somebody would have told me, but I'm gonna share my fuck ups first. Yeah, so I'm always easy to tell people. We almost lost this entire farm. My wife's car was repossessed. She had to cash in her 401k to legitimately save our farm. And I do that because I want to create the environment that people can open up and say, this is what they're really struggling with. Because if you're not honest with what you need help with, like business finance is not my MO, nor will it ever be, but I continue to strive and learn it. And I luckily have people on my team. And if people won't let their hair down enough to be vulnerable to say I need help in this area, then they won't grow. They'll create a shitty job for themselves that just makes them miserable. And they'll actually be more miserable than they were working for somebody else because now they have no time doing all this
Right,
shit.
because they're everything, and it's when you have that. I've always had mentors, right? I've always had a small group of people who have gone the path that I was looking to go, right? That I can call up and I call up Jim probably 4 or 5 times a year. I got this situation, and I don't have I don't need to give him the backstory. I don't need, like, he knows, and he's like, oh, dude, all you need to do is call this guy, and he will do X, right? Or he'll just give me a piece of advice on something that's occurring, but to your point, if you're not honest and vulnerable about where you are, and if you don't start with that, I screwed this up, or this was a big problem, or whatever that catastrophe is, because those are the lessons that we remember and that we learn the most from, right? We don't learn from the success, we learn from those as you say, fuck ups.
For sure. Yeah, in corporate America, you didn't tell anybody you were fucking up because if you told anybody you were screwing something up, you were reprimanded. You either got yelled at or you lost your job or whatever. There wasn't a good thing. So as a species as a whole, we're not ingrained in this idea of seeking out advice. Yeah, even as kids, I mean, you can go so far to say, at some point somebody said, "Quit asking me fucking questions." You know, so we're trying to help get people around the idea that it's okay to say, "Hey, I need some help here."
Well, yeah, to raise your hand
And
and ask for some support. Ask like, hey, I have no freaking idea how to do this. And the idea that what we're taught as kids, especially with sales, because we do development work with people, we were told to be seen and not heard. We were told to keep our mouth shut. We were told not. It's impolite to ask about money. We were told to not talk to strangers. We were told it was rude to ask too many questions. And then when you get into sales, you got to do all those things. You got to go talk to somebody you don't know. You got to try to build some rapport. You got to ask them those tough questions. Um, and if you're not, if you especially if you come out of corporate world, because you said something else earlier that really hit home, like you're selling the widget or you're selling the service in the job, but now you're the widget or you're the service. It's harder to detach from that outcome. If somebody tells you no, they're actually telling you no, right? Because you're not good enough as whatever the product or service is.
well, that's what goes through the head, right? I mean, that's what people think. And, I think one of the ways we help most people is to, reframe the idea of what sales is. Because, truthfully, let's be honest, most of us across the world, you give us the right person, the right conversation at the right time, and we can make a sale happen, right? It's not rocket science to go have a real conversation. So it's not so much the sales call that people struggle with. It's getting to the damn sales call because that's where all the real work happens. Unless you're in some sort of transactional sales like, insurance, financial advisory, something along the lines where it's a one-time, done and out. Most people, like I saw a survey, like 85% of businesses are service based. So they sell air,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because they're selling, some sort of consulting type thing.
Smoke.
And yeah, yeah. So when you're in that game, then the sales conversation is just an ebb and flow and figuring out basically what will happen with the two, well, both sides will do working together. But getting to that conversation, all the business development stuff, that's where people actually suck at because that's all well, now I got to talk to a stranger. Now I've got to, go to an event or something, meet somebody and pray to God that they want to have a further conversation. And, very few people in the world teach that side of sales. So as an organization, we focus a lot on the business development so they can get into the conversations because, you go get 100 conversations with people that can say yes to you, you're going to figure out how to have that fucking conversation.
Well, it's
But if you can't get those 100 conversations, then you're screwed.
yeah. You have to be able to have the right. You know, you got to have the grit, right? To go do it, and then you have to have the what we call sales DNA. That mindset to go have those conversations and not be intimidated, not be worried about, right? Just to go forward. And then there's some skills that are required to be able to engage in that conversation in a way where you're asking the right questions at the right time, but also keeping your mouth shut long enough to listen to what somebody's saying. But picking up the phone, the first thing is getting out of the way of yourself to move forward.
And there's a really stupid, simple way to do it. It's not a hack, it's not a trick, it's not anything. Just grab a buddy, and I want you to grab your most ball busting friend you can, and I want you guys to do you go, I go. And you call, and the rules are you tell your buddy, if I fuck up, you better bust my chops. And I mean, freaking roast the shit out of me. Right? So you make a call, you completely fuck it up. Your buddy goes, dude, I can't believe you said that dumb shit. You're like, all right, fucker, your turn. Let's
Right.
go. You go. And right when they go, and if they fuck it up, you bust his chops, and then you're back in. But the other side of that is if you say something right, you do the right thing, you got to fucking praise each other. Go, dude, well done.
Right.
Right? And now you're not all up in your head because now it's like, all right, I'm gonna get through this so I can bust his chops or they can bust my chops. And most of sales, if you do your business development, side by side with somebody else, there's less and less time for you to get up in your own fucking head because they're gonna dial, so I gotta dial. And what most people do is they put themselves by themselves and they're all fucking crumpled up trying to make cold calls or trying to send DMs, and then they second guess everything.
They're worried
And
what
when you get
somebody's
somebody
going to
second guess you,
hear. They're going to hear somebody's going to hear me say
yep,
something stupid, and it is literally getting out of your own way and making the just picking up the phone and making the dials, getting a rhythm going, but having the buddy, as you say, busting each other's balls, is a way I haven't heard it put that way, but it's practice, right? And that's
yep.
something that salespeople, sales managers,
Well,
we don't do.
but I want them to do that when they're not just practice. I want them to do that during their actual cold calling.
Oh,
Like
side by
so, I
side,
like if you
literally across
side
the
by
desk.
side, like if you, yeah. So I want them to be calling on real prospects,
I love it.
but I want their buddy sitting there so it's live, it's going because that way because you can role play cold calling all you want, but it and there's instances of that working so you can get the words out. But fucking get in the game.
So when I was in New York, we had bullpens, and we would have these. All the young guys were in the bullpen, and all the senior guys had offices on the outside. And we had that thing where um, somebody would pop up over the wall, and it's like, I can't believe you said that. Or were you talking to so and so about, such and such? So there was a little bit of that, right? Because there was that energy in the room. We'd also do some really kind of dick moves where somebody would just berate us on the other end of the phone because we're making cold calls to people that had no idea who we were. So we would take the 3x5 card. That's how old I am. We take the 3x5 card and just put a red circle around it. And what that meant is that you give it to the guy on the other side of the wall, and it went around the whole bullpen, right? Because you put your initials outside the circle. Everybody called that guy within the hour, right? And just to make a point, it was our little cold calling, the only little reprieve that we had. But then you got the card back, and you could call a guy back in a couple of months when you wouldn't remember who it was. So the idea that you're competing with each other, helping each other, it's a safe place. You're giving immediate feedback on what's working. Plus, you're getting the feedback from the people on the phone, right? I love it. So, what do you think is causing what do you think? Because it causes salespeople just to fail in general, right? Is it that they shouldn't have been there in the first place? Is it mindset? Is it like quitters?
I mean, it's always mindset. I've had the honor of doing a lot of sales training over the years, and one quick funny bullpit story is I was training a company that had about 500 people that were all dialers, and they were all outbound sales, inside sales, and their team was struggling, so they brought me in to do some sales training. Want to know how to get fired from a training job, coaching job, really really quick? Show up and say, all right, guys, first thing we're going to do is have the vice president go ahead and show you guys how it's done. He's going to grab the phone and do some dials for you. You went fucking freaked the fuck out. He's like, hold on, time out, time out. Because I knew most of these fucking people that were in the higher ups had never done the dials before, but they were damn sure going to be coaching these people.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they didn't invite me back to finish that session, but
But that's
I
but
thought it was
that's the
funny as hell.
principle. Like in education, if you can't teach, they make you assistant principal, and if you can't do that, they make you principal. And if you suck at all of that, you're superintendent.
So, just along that lines, I mean, for me, almost every Friday you can find me on LinkedIn doing live dial cold calling. Where you'll hear, I mean, I'll just go live on LinkedIn from my phone here on the desk and just do cold calls on speakerphone so you can hear both sides of the conversation. And only reason I do that is I want people to understand that it's just a damn conversation. But most salespeople, like I trained one company and this new gal came in like 3 days. She had done like 200 dials. I mean, and she was just really hammering the phones. And we were all kind of like, man, this might be a little rock star until we looked at her call log. She was calling her cell phone over and over and over again. She was so scared to actually do the work, she was calling her freaking cell phone. And when we tried to talk to her, she just quit instantly. And yeah, people, because they don't like themselves and because they are such opinionated assholes and such judgmental assholes, like they're the people that suck most at sales are the ones that are like, dude, that guy's fat, that guy's an idiot, that girl's ugly, that and they really are judgmental of others. So they think everybody's hyper judgmental of them. So all they can hear is somebody seeing every flaw they have, every issue they have, and that's all that runs through their fucking head when they get on the phone. So I tell most people, quit being a judgmental prick and you won't worry about it so much. Actually like the dude that looks back at you in the mirror
Mm.
and none of this shit will matter. Right? Your best people.
That's a real thing that you see yourself in other people is what you're describing. And if you stop being a judgmental asshole, then you will have a better relationship with the person in the mirror, like you said. I mean, that's gold. It's literally gold for somebody listening.
We would prove it all the time that the people on the phone that you're talking to won't remember you. I can't tell you how many times we'd have somebody do cold calls. They'd get a really harsh receptionist or something that just stonewalls the shit out of them. I'm like, circle that number. We do 10, 20, 30 other calls. I'm like, call that number. They call back, and the receptionist, really sweet and nice, and they let them through. Receptionist doesn't know who the fuck you are, doesn't care, right? But isn't going to remember you. So for you to take that fucking rejection early on, like she was fucking around with you, she probably had a coffee spilled in her lap, or somebody just came and yelled at her
Yep,
ass. She's having a bad fucking moment,
exactly.
and you got the brunt of it.
And you got to let it go and move on. It's just part of the game, and you got to laugh. I mean, we used to have a little 3x5 card on the desk that taped above the phone that said next, right? Just to remind you that you just had to keep going. I was doing about 400 dials a day. Dials. I didn't have 400 conversations. I got 400 clicks, usually because people picked up. It was before caller ID. But I mean, I was doing that in the city, so there was nobody worried about how you were going to perceive them. It was like, piss off and click. Sometimes it was just a click, and like, you're calling me now about this? Yeah, why not? And they would get upset and scream and holler, and it was just it was how you earned your stripes, so to speak. You got your bones.
I can teach you how to get people to stop doing that.
I'm all ears.
It's so. Let's have some fun. I think your listeners will get a kick out of it. All I want you to do is to be you, president of your company. I'm just going to cold call you really quick. You ready?
Ready.
So, ring, ring.
Hello?
Yeah, is this Walter?
It's Walter.
Hey, Walter, Donnie Boivin.
What's going on, Donnie?
My name sound familiar at all?
Doesn't ring a bell.
Well, I'm sorry, Walter. This makes this a cold call, and I got to be honest. I really don't like doing these things. Is it okay if I tell you why I'm calling, or do you want to go ahead and hang up?
I got 15 seconds. Go.
I'm telling you, 90% of the time, that's exactly what happens. Because it's not a traditional style cold call.
No, you're breaking their pattern, right?
100% a pattern interrupt.
So I was working with a guy a couple years ago who we were both kind of trained to do something similar. This is what he did. He'd get the guy on the phone and say, "Hey, Donnie, Walter Crosby. Does my name sound familiar?" He'd do the same thing. He goes, "I got to tell you, I got to be honest with you. This is a cold call, and I'm not very good at them, and I'm going to need your help." And he would.
I like that. I like that. I'm going to need your help. Yeah.
He would get one of two reactions. The guy would bust up laughing, like, "Are you serious? Yeah, I suck at this. I'm really good on the other end, but I suck at this part." Or the guy would just hang up, right? Which is no different than what could happen otherwise. But he always got, when the guy laughed, he always had a conversation. Now, wherever it went, but he got the conversation, and that's the goal, is to get a conversation going and determine if there's something
Yeah,
there or not.
for sure, most people will do exactly what you said. All right, go ahead, tell me what you got, or I've got 30 seconds, go, right? And as long as you don't go, the biggest thing people got to remember is you have to stay being a human being. The moment you become a salesperson, you're treated like a salesperson. So you have to so when you put your guard in, you get vulnerable and say, I suck at this, or I don't like doing this, or I need a little help, you become human. When they say go ahead, you can't go into this stoic fucking sales. Well, we are the best, blah blah blah. As whatever.
Right.
You got to say, like, a young kid taught me this, and he's the greatest sales kid I've ever taught in my life. He just landed $8 million 7-Eleven for the Central U.S. Huge 1 year freaking package with them, right? Monster deal. And um, he was cold calling, and I was teaching him my style of cold calling. And I used to, when they said go ahead, I kind of had this canned scripted thing that I always did. And he goes, "Can I show you something?" And I said, "Sure." And he sold, stickers, labels that go on bottles and stuff. And he goes, "Let me show you what I've figured out to do." I said, "All right, cool, show me." So the next company he calls up, he does the same front end. It gets him to lean in. And he goes, "Do you guys ever print stickers?" And they would always go, "Yeah, yeah." And he goes, "You know what? Um, can I just come see your stickers? I'm fascinated by them." And they're like, "Sure." And they would invite him to come in, and because it was so, he wasn't saying we're the best sticker company. We wasn't saying we print labels. He was asking. So we started using it with people, and no matter what they sell, the question was, do you do X? Do you have X? And because it got them talking, it totally changed the dynamic of the conversation, and we were getting our people into a lot more because they were learning to stay human through the conversation.
Staying human is a unique way of looking at it, because I always look at it as authentic. You have to be, if you can be a little bit of vulnerable on that call, where you're literally trying to have a conversation like you would with a friend, right? So there's got to be some skepticism there, but there's got to be a bunch of empathy on the front end. You got to get their attention, and you got 10, 12 seconds to do that. But if you can break their pattern just enough to get in, they're human too. You not get anywhere, but you got to get in to have that conversation. Um, and what's fun is, I was doing some work with a couple of people, and it was early in the process, and they were like, you don't understand our business, because this doesn't work in our business. I'm like, yeah, I know, you guys are unique. What you sell is so special, and like, I don't know shit about your product, right? He goes, no. I said, give me the phone. Just dial the phone, call one of your people, and it took two or three calls to get somebody on the phone, and I just did my thing. And I had a conversation with the guy, and once he started asking me, like, well, how does that work? I'm like, yeah, no, it's a good question. It's a little early here to be able to. Could we get on? Could we schedule something? Because I got to get to another meeting. And I handed him back the phone, and I'm like, it's not that hard. It's not got anything to do with product knowledge. It's got nothing to do with. It's about having an idea that you're going to try to help somebody. And if you can help them, great. If you can't, next. I'm on to the next one. But it sometimes you got to, like, poke that salesperson in the eye like that to make them realize that they're.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. Most of these guys, especially anybody who's a little bit long in the tooth, that tell you they got 10, 20 years of sales, they don't have 10 or 22 years of sales. They got year one repeated 20, 30 times, um, because they're still doing the same shit they did on year one, and they've never actually evolved. And it's fascinating to me how much people don't actually practice their craft, learn about their craft, train in their craft. They just go bang their head against the
Yep.
wall.
Yeah, and it's a real. Salespeople and athletes get compared all the time, and there couldn't be more divergent. Corporations and sales organizations like the Patriots, the Yankees, right? They're designed to try to win and be competitive, right? And corporate XYZ company, that's not their goal, right? That's not how they're structured. And salespeople don't want to practice. Athletes want to practice. They expect to be coached. They expect feedback. They expect somebody to give them, some guidance along the way. And salespeople and sales managers are repelled by the idea. So I love the idea of this mastermind where you're actually in the face, getting in there, helping people, rolling up your sleeves and doing the work. So if somebody listening wants to get in on that action, I know the VIP tickets are gone, but they could still get in. How do they do that?
So you can do, well, so they can go to badassbusinesssummit.com. We have standard tickets available. And we also have a business mastermind where we work and teach a lot of things. So if they go to championtable.com, they can see our mastermind programs where we teach a lot of this as well.
So we're going to have all that in the show notes for people to check out. But when is the summit next year, 23?
So we always do it in September. So we're in negotiations with the hotels now. We don't have the specific dates locked
But
down.
September is when somebody will.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Yep. My last question, we could talk here. A couple of sales guys are never going to be short of things to chat about.
For sure.
Because you got a bunch of stuff in the background here that we could spend a couple hours just talking about what's behind you. A relationship with cigars. You have one?
So, yep. So one story, and then I'll tell you my favorite cigar. So, my brother lives in Florida. We stop off at a cigar shop, and my brother's just one of those guys that he recognizes everybody. So we're in there, we're buying a case of guitar or a case of cigars to go out on a deep sea fishing trip. And we're standing there, and this guy walks up next to me, and my brother goes, "Has anybody ever told you you look like Chris Farley's brother?" And the guy goes, "Well, I am Chris Farley's brother."
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So we stood there, and he was he was just a cool dude, man. So we got all pictures with him. We're talking about Chris Farley, and he's like, "Man, if you guys want, I'm performing tonight." And he's a comedian and on his own right, owns a lot of stages and stuff. But he was such a good, just genuine dude, and that was his local cigar shop where he hung out and got all his cigars and everything. And was but it was just funny as shit. He's like, "You look like Chris Farley's brother." I am Chris Farley's brother,
But that's like being bold enough to open up a conversation with somebody, right? I mean, and you never know where that goes. Right. That's awesome. So your favorite cigar?
Yep, is Drew Estates Naturals. So my true cigar connoisseurs, I usually drive them fucking bonkers when I say this, but they're the rum dip cigars. So they're still a big cigar, but for me, so think of it as an expensive Swisher Sweet almost.
How familiar?
Because they are really, 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 really sweet. That's my favorite damn cigar. But usually when I tell people that, like, really? Like, you say that in the out loud voice.
You're telling people in the world. Yeah, Drew Estates they have a reputation within the premium community, right? That, but he's making cigars for. He's got lines all over the place, so you can go from wherever you want to wherever you want. Like a lot of cigars, and I buy my cigars, a lot of them from a place in Ybor City. And when you buy the cigar, you can add, they offer, if you want a sweet tip to it. And all they do is just dip it into sugar. It's not my thing. Right. I prefer just the straight tobacco, but so,
best cigar I've ever had was in Jamaica. The lady there was hand rolling, so the big leaves and just hand rolling them. And she couldn't speak a lick of English, so I couldn't ask her what the leaves were and everything. So let me tell you though, best damn cigar I've ever had in my freaking life. She just hand rolled it right then and there, got it tight. She trimmed the end on. She cut the little bit off the end. She lit it. God, that thing was good. Now, I might have also had a bottle of rum in me at that point too, so it could have been a really shitty cigar. But I remember that as being the best damn cigar.
It's the best damn cigar experience that you've had, right? No matter what, I don't know what the quality of cigar was. It's all about the experience. And to me, it's sort of like wine. It doesn't matter Like if you enjoyed it and you like it, if you like the little rum on the end of your cigar, it depends. If it's your thing, it's your thing. You like them, you like them. I'm not a guy that likes those big, huge cigars that, like I call them, they'll kick your ass. It's got all that Ligero
Yeah.
inside them,
You look like Boss Hog.
and they're really, really dark. And it's just
Yep.
that's not my thing.
Not
I'm in the middle, like a full bodied, like in the middle side of that, because I don't, yeah. But I also don't care for the super light ones. But all right, man. Really fun, a great conversation. We'll have all of the links that you shared with in our show notes. This will drop on a Tuesday, folks. If you're
and let me do one one really cool quick thing for you. So guys, if you stick with us this long, you're still listening, you got any value out of this thing, do Walter a favor and share this episode or one of his past episodes with a buddy that would get a kick out of this or would like to learn these things. Having my own podcast, I can tell you it's a bitch to grow the show and get new listeners. So tell one person about this show so you can help him spread these cool, fun sales conversations, cigar conversations with other people. It'll mean the world.
very generous, man. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
To get your copy of Walter Crosby's new book, The 7 Critical Mistakes CEOs Make with Their Sales Organization That Stop the Company from Scaling, follow the link in the show notes or go to Amazon.com. Thank you for listening to Sales and Cigars with Walter Crosby of Helix Sales Development. For more on Sales and Cigars, remember to like, share, and subscribe. Sales and Cigars, produced by thepodcastproshop.com.